We genuinely believe that God brought us together for a mission bigger than ourselves, to help change culture and to inspire young people and young men to pursue more in life.
Fame, clout, money. Thinking back at it, that was probably what our priorities were going to be.
Yeah.
You know, let's be as famous as Nell.
I'm looking at Chris. Chris is looking at Bayley. I'm looking at Nick, and we're just like, what do we do?
If you're trying to start something and you're trying to make everything perfect, you're never going to start.
Our faith is at the root of what we're doing. Our faith is at the foundation of us doing this podcast.
To watch your podcast, they have to not listen to Gary Vee. They have to not listen to Logan Paul. So you have to think, what am I going to provide to people that they can't get anywhere else?
You have to be patient.
Yeah. Chris, I heard through the grapevine that you're now 30, is it?
Through the grapevine.
30 years old.
Supposed to be one of my best mates. You should
I am
know
the
this.
grapevine.
Bro, that
know
is a
this.
huge
You're
milestone.
30, bro. How does it
30,
feel being
bro.
my age?
30, bro. I'm closer to my death now.
Literally.
No, but they do say like the 30s for men are like their best years.
Everyone says that. People messaging me on Instagram. They're like,
Yeah.
bro, trust me, your 30s are going to be your best years. I'm
Bro,
like,
You're not
I've-
even at your prime
I'm like, my
yet.
20s were pretty good.
I found that since I turned 30 last year, like it's weird, right? Because I have this like extra level of responsibility in my life. So I can no longer do the things I used to do. There's more accountability. There's more at stake.
Well, that 1 year suddenly made a difference.
Literally, bro. I don't know if it's like a mindset thing, but for me, like being 30 is like a whole nother level. It's like there's no more messing about.
What are you most excited for, bro?
Bro, I think I'm so excited to just see what God's got in store for me, man. I've had so many blessings this year. You know, so many of my
100%.
prayers, you know, that I was praying for maybe last year,
Yeah.
you know, 6 months ago, have all started coming together, coming through. God's been delivering.
Yeah.
You know, obviously I'm still putting in the work. You know,
You're
God's
smashing on
not a
TikTok
magic
Live
jet.
as well, eh?
Yeah.
100%.
You're,
amazing.
aren't you
This guy's
number
carving up
3?
everything.
So,
Yeah, so I
guys,
came-
just to preface real quick before you get in the episode, Chris has been doing TikTok Live for the last year or so.
It's been
And
maybe 8 months.
You guys can say what you want, but it is an absolute grind. Like this guy's on like, you know, live stream for hours every single
like
night till
4
3 in the
Bro,
morning,
he
4
rocks
in the
up to
morning.
the podcast on an hour sleep.
An
and
hour
still
sleep,
carves
just
it up.
hustling.
It's
And
crazy.
like TikTok Live is very rigorous. Like it's
It
tedious, it's long, it takes ages to actually get somewhere. But
Yeah.
you're number 3 in Australia this week.
Yeah, so
that's crazy,
so
bro.
Yesterday I finished number 3 in
That's
Australia.
amazing. Well, round of applause for Chris, guys.
Thank you.
Bro,
Thank you. And it
what
was
a birthday present.
Amazing.
It was
Yeah.
an
Just a
amazing
little
birthday
bonus.
present, bro. Everyone showed love. Everyone came together. It was amazing achievement because as you said, bro, I put in so much time and effort. You know, people think it's easy, but it's a lot
Nah,
of
bro.
work.
TikTok Live's a whole thing in
So
itself.
yeah, it's been a blessing, man. God's been constantly blessing us, blessing me. But I'm 30 now. I'm excited for what life's got in store. I'm excited for my relationship, my family, my friends, and this podcast, bro.
Yeah.
You know, like we always say, guys, like we haven't even scratched the surface. Like we are, you know, almost 30 episodes in, and we have still so much to go. We have so many, bro. Every time we get together, we've got so many juices of thought. Like we just got so many things that we're thinking about, so many like avenues we want to go down, so many things we want to do with this. And we're so excited to, you know, eventually show you guys exactly what we've got.
Yeah, it's funny. These guys have no idea, I guess, how much effort and time and, you know, process goes into these episodes.
So
you know?
much, bro.
As you said, we're like almost 30 episodes in, but no one knows about the mornings that we have to get up at, you know, 5, 6 sometimes, going to the cafe, you know, pumping it out, all the preparation
Some
involved, all the phone
crazy
calls we
shit,
have,
bro.
all the, you know, the team, all the staff.
I
and
tell people and they're shocked.
It's a perfect way to kind of like start this episode as well, because in this episode, guys, we want to tell you, you know, all the things that you need to know before you start a podcast and what actually goes into it that you may not know already. There are hidden secrets that we wish we learned, you know, before starting that we're going to reveal to you guys, so that if you guys, you know, want to do something like us, not that we're anything crazy like Logan Paul or
still
Joe
warming
I
Rogan.
want to preface that. Yeah, we're not trying to like pretend like we're suddenly after 30 episodes massive experts.
Not at all.
But obviously, like anything, whether it's a business, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a relationship, you will learn things throughout the journey. And like we've been blessed to get to 30 episodes.
Yeah.
And we have learned so much along the way. So many
100%.
things that early on we had no idea about, we know now.
We want to teach you guys these
we've learned.
things. Yeah, we want to teach you guys these things on this episode so you don't have to make the same mistakes that we did.
And we're still learning.
Exactly.
Every day we're learning.
And we've got a long way to go.
Long way to
That's
go.
cool. That's part of the journey. And that's the point. Like, if you want to start a podcast journey or anything, you have to embrace the journey so much. And I think as we're talking about this, one of the key words that comes to my mind on why we've been able to push through the barriers that most people can't break through starting a podcast, and just the word that comes to my mind is just obsession. And like that word's really been resonating with me lately, because like anything, you don't realize how hard it is until you're actually in it. We didn't realize the intricacies, the level of thought, detail, planning, structure that has to go into just to make even clips that might not even get many views.
Right. Yeah.
Or we might have some that go absolutely viral. Like we have some now that have met many, many millions, even I think 10 million views on a clip.
One of ours got 10 million views, guys.
We're going to break down out the things we learned on how to go that viral a bit later. But I think, just tying it back to obsession, because the only way you get better at something at a much faster rate than anyone else is your attention to detail. And we literally sit like, I know these guys as well, but I will literally sit and watch every single clip, analyze every stat of every platform. And every week we're coming with suggestions. We're asking people who are listening for feedback. And as soon as we get the feedback, we implement it straight away. So that's encouragement for anyone in a podcast, but also just in anything in life.
Yeah.
I honestly believe that your rate of growth faster than everyone else is purely down to your level of obsession with the craft.
Yeah,
and I think that's something we've really got really good at.
And I think one of the amazing things about us is, and what I guess differentiates us from a lot of other podcasts, is we actually have a deeper meaning as to why we're doing this. And I'm going to touch on that.
Yeah.
But I want to take it all the way back. Like, how did we, I'm sure
How do we
We
start this
love
whole
taking
thing?
it all the way back.
I'm sure everyone's thinking, like, how did we even come about? Like, what is Locker Room about? Like, I know we've touched on it here and there, but like, how did these three guys, we've got our team behind the camera. Like, how did we even come about? Like, we didn't really know Bayley 2 years ago.
Yeah.
How crazy is that, bro?
I think, bringing it right back, it was one of those things, because Chris and I have been friends for 15 years or so now. And I remember back in our sort of like days where we were partying and doing all that, we wanted to do a podcast together.
Bro, yeah.
But it just for some reason just didn't work out. It wasn't the right time. I was traveling a lot. You had your stuff going on as well. And for some reason, like the idea was the idea, but it never got executed.
Bro, I had the idea. Like one day I remember I'm obsessed with podcasts. I love watching podcasts, whether it's, business, informational, entertainment, all these different podcasts. And I was like, I love talking. I've been
I didn't know that.
You guys didn't know that. I love talking, as you guys probably know. I do a lot, and I've been told I'm somewhat entertaining. I can be seen as funny, and me and Jamie, like whenever we're together, like we just have amazing chemistry, amazing banter. Like we know how to bounce off each other really well. So I said to Jamie one day, I was like, bro, like this is a while back. What if we did a podcast? I was like, this is a genius idea. Like, what if we do a podcast?
This is back in like 2019 or 2018 when podcasts kind of just sort of started to pop in Australia, right?
And look,
So you guys started it.
We did start it.
We did start the idea of a podcast. Bro, and like at this time, in hindsight, which was a great thing, but at the time, Jamie was very busy. I had a lot of stuff on as well. And so he was like, that's a good idea. He's like, I'm doing a lot right now, but like, let's come back to this.
Yeah.
And, life takes its course, things come up. We kind of just, put it on the burner for a long time. And it kind of was like in the back of our heads, but we never really talked about it again for a while. And
so then the second part of this kind of happened where we forgot about it for a few years. And then in 2022, I think definitely for me personally, I matured a lot. And so did you, Chris. You found your girlfriend and we sort of adopted a new habit, a new way. Yeah, I found God. We adopted a new lifestyle, both of us at the same time. I actually remember I was in the food court and I called you. I'm like, bro, we should do a podcast.
Yeah.
And you go, yeah, 100%. And we actually met up at the gym and talked about it in like March 2022. We had this whole thing going on. And then I remember you were keen, but then I just got too busy all of a sudden. And I'm like, you know what, bro, I can't do it still. So we delayed it even further. Then all of a sudden,
within like 6 months.
6 months, yeah.
You discovered God. You met Bayley at church.
Yeah. Met Bayley at church. And I saw this guy for the first time. I'm like, yeah. He's going to
be on my podcast. Nah, you guys naturally just build a relationship. Like I doubt a podcast was even at your mind at that time.
Yeah.
Right?
I never wanted to do
You
that.
you can take over from here.
Yeah, because
Me?
Bayley, like, take us through. Like, you're not, naturally someone who's very confident on camera. You're not someone who
Yeah.
does most of the talking, even though you talk really well and you articulate yourself well. But
You got the most viral reels as well.
Yeah, take us through that, bro.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. I think, as the guys said, we clicked straight away. But for me, it wasn't about a podcast. And we'll touch on this. This is a point we also want to make is like, I don't know if we made it before, but having a calling or a vision that's bigger than yourself is ultimately what makes things fulfilling.
Yeah.
And the thing that we obviously clicked straight away, and then I think not long after that, you introduced me to Chris. But
Chris came to church for the first time.
doing
our
social
church.
media, doing social media and doing podcasting was not on my radar at all. Like I wasn't fussed. I didn't really want to do that kind of thing.
You were happy
I was
behind
happy
the
doing
scenes.
business and stuff. But we sort of, me and Jamie went to a conference down in Melbourne, and this random guy came up to us and sort of gave us a prophecy saying, you're going to do something for the kingdom. I can't remember the exact vision that it was.
I forgot about
But
that.
I remember that stuck with me because I was like, that's interesting. And then after you guys proposed,
But he specifically
the idea-
said you and I.
yeah.
Yeah.
Ah,
And
well,
Chris,
he didn't know me. I
Chris
wasn't
wasn't there, but if you were there, it would have been included. But
there. Yeah, I'm sure.
and so that really stuck with me, and I was like, I'm so focused on like I don't let things take me off course of my mission unless I feel like it's in line, like God aligned. And I just knew as soon as these guys proposed the idea, I think Jamie introduced me to Chris, and these guys were like, let's do a podcast.
Like,
And I even remember just sort of taking it a step further back. Something that especially you and I were talking about a lot during that time was there's no one out there that kind of like we can relate to in a sense of like there are a couple guys out there, they live normal lives, but they have biblical morals like we do. And we were always sort of searching and thinking like, oh, well, we have these morals that we've adopted and we're actually like in sort of like a minority we feel. And who's out there sort of like showing men that, you can live a good life and a successful life, but also follow God at the same time. And we're like, what if we kind of helped do that? What if we were the ones that tried to, influence the youth in that way? And I remember you and I were in the car in, I think my good car back then. And we actually have a video that we can maybe overlay potentially.
Yeah, true. That's crazy.
Of me and Bayley in the car. I think I was wearing a blue jacket or something. And we go, guys, the date is this right now. We're
Jamie
going to
loves
start
doing this stuff, manifesting it, putting it into the world.
I love doing stuff like when we have an idea and I go to myself, you know what, in the future we might actually need this footage to see where it all started.
Makes you accountable as well.
So you and I had this literal clip on my phone, we can overlay it, of us saying, guys, and we worded it differently. We're like, we want to be the Christian Nelk.
Yeah, that's right.
We want to create something like a movement, like a culture that shows guys that they can still be successful and cool and, live in the world, but not have worldly ideologies and live for God.
Be so degenerate with the activities.
And then I remember so clearly, straight after this conversation with us, I go, we need Chris.
Yeah.
We need Chris. I don't know why it just came to me. And I actually remember where I was when I messaged you, Chris. I was literally next to the shopping center walking home and I go, hey, bro, would you be down to start a podcast? And I asked you as well about each other. And it all just
like,
manifested, bro.
Done.
It was
I'm
crazy.
in.
Yeah.
So yeah. And obviously, as Bayley said, there is a deeper calling as to why we are doing this.
Yeah.
But yeah.
We all genuinely believe that God brought us together for a reason to sort of create this. And that's a lesson that we want to tie back from that story. The lesson for those at home who want to do something is make it something bigger than yourself, because this is the same with business. All the top, successful entrepreneurs say people don't last if they're in it for money or self-serving.
Yeah, love what
if they're
you
in
do.
it for self-serving purposes. So honestly, if we were in this podcast to purely serve ourselves just for our own fame, ego and things, I don't think it would have lasted because of the sacrifice and time and effort that has and money to be open that goes into producing something like this. But having that higher calling and mission, we genuinely believe that God brought us together for a mission bigger than ourselves to help change culture and to inspire young people and young men to pursue more in life. That's such a big calling to the point where like we'll run through anything to make this work.
And on that point, like I'm going to be 100% transparent. Like when me and Jamie back in the day, before he found God, when we wanted to do that podcast, we were doing it for self-serving reasons. Like realistically, the main reason was fame, clout, money. I'm going to be honest. That's probably like thinking back at it, that was probably what our priorities were going to be.
Yeah.
Let's be as famous as Nelk. Let's, this is cool, very self-serving. And look at that, like how amazing that is that God didn't let that come to fruition at the time.
Yeah.
The seed was there, but it didn't come in, because of our lives and whatever.
Yeah.
And 2 years later, conveniently, he found God, he found you, and everything lined up.
Right.
I'm not saying there wasn't, we didn't have ups and downs and there wasn't difficulties, but everything lined up and God curated everything for it to play out, for us to come together.
We cannot, I'm telling you guys, we cannot make up the stories of the things that have happened to make this podcast come to life.
We wouldn't have survived.
Yeah.
Like we wouldn't have survived back then, I think.
Yeah.
If we didn't have this bigger calling
100%.
to be serving God.
100%. And yeah, before like you guys out there get into this sort of thing, definitely have that calling. But I think we should start touching on, things that are practical and if
100%.
people want to actually know, that's all well and good. I want to start a podcast for whatever reason out there. How do I actually do it? Like, what's the first step they need to do? I think, as you said, we got really lucky. But how do the viewers out there have the same luck, and what's the process behind it?
Well, we got together in a boardroom with a whiteboard.
Yeah.
We literally got together with a whiteboard. And one thing that we're really good at, and we're blessed to be able to do this, is we're really good at bouncing off each other.
Yeah.
We have this thing, it's like, I call it like a snowball effect, where one of us has an idea and it's almost like it's not a perfect idea. It's just a thought. And then like I'll say something, then Jamie will add on to it, then Bayley will add on to it. And literally we'll go around like 3-4 times and then we'll come to like a final conclusion and it will be like
which
bang.
is so cool. Yeah.
We were in that boardroom for 4 hours, 5 hours, literally just coming up with the name.
To like midnight, yeah.
Coming up with the name, coming up with titles, coming up what we're going to talk about, how we're going to bring God in. Like so many things.
Yeah.
Before we could even start, we'd had to have an idea of what we were doing it, who we were doing it, like who was our target audience, and the reason why we're doing this.
100%. And then what we also had to do, I think the biggest blessing for all of us as well, was that there wasn't just one, there was 3 of us.
Bro,
Yeah, that makes it
I
so
think
much easier.
to this day, I don't know how long we would have lasted if it was just 1 or 2, if we didn't have the whole 3. Because obviously we all have busy lives. And sometimes I'll be too busy traveling and then you guys can sort of, hold the ship and vice versa. So it's like, I do think like for me, I'd encourage people out there to potentially get at least one other person on board. So there's double the accountability, if not triple. And that's what we, I think, have
I think people
together.
assume like three's too much or it's too many people talking.
Yeah.
But it's
And
a blessing.
we have had to learn how to overcome that, because we have had, feedback in the early episodes where we're talking over each other or we're jumping on each other's questions. But that's part of the learning curve, and that's the balance. I do like on the thing of having other people. It depends on your target audience and the message, because we just had to learn very quickly. Most people that have big podcasts is interview style, one-on-one. Whereas we had to find the balance between a discussion style, which is so different. It's very hard because people have different agendas and different questions they want to ask, and we're still figuring this out. Like it's very hard to have one guest and 3 of us trying to get our questions in. But that's kind of, I think, is going to, whilst it was a weakness at the start, I think it's going to become our strength in the future, where no one can really replicate our discussion ability because we're bouncing off each other and making the guests sort of feel that vibe. And it's not just we ask a question and you answer. It's more like a discussion, which is really cool for us.
That's the beauty of it, bro. And like anything, even a business, like you don't, a lot of people have this misconception that when you're going to start something new, everything has to be perfect. And I think it's Gary Vee who said, like, if you trying to start something and you're trying to make everything perfect, you're never going to start. We learned so much early days. As you said, talking over each other. Like we got constructive criticism. We posted our first few videos. We listened to the comments. Instead of being offended and going, oh, these guys don't know what they're talking about, we got together. We said, all right, how do we do this? How do we improve? All right, when someone's speaking, we just got to be more conscious. Don't ask a question right after. Give each other breaks. And it's just things you will learn. So as you go, guys, you will learn, you will improve. It's not going to be perfect. We're still not perfect.
Yeah.
Every episode, we're learning new things.
100%.
But it's just being humble enough to acknowledge things and take them on board and improve.
100%.
Yeah, and I think, we should kind of touch on some really challenging things we've been through, because it might seem more, rainbows and unicorns, but this podcast is really hard work and not everything goes to plan. Something usually generally happens every week where we have to adjust and fix our lives around it and be flexible. What for you guys was like the most challenging thing in the last 6 months of doing this podcast together?
Bro, for me, take a minute, but for me, I honestly think the people don't realize how much back end like posting and stuff there was.
Oh, bro.
So early on, obviously we're fortunate enough to have Nick our amazing filmer, right? We didn't have an editor. He was editing and filming, and it was a lot of work, but he also does work for Jamie. So he was, pushed to the absolute max. And it got to the point where, early on, each one of us was taking the responsibility to be posting every single day. But we're on like 10 platforms.
That was a nightmare.
We're on 10 platforms. So, bro, I remember vividly, it was a Saturday night, and I've got plans to go out. And for 3 hours, I was cutting, because we obviously post our reels and whatnot. So I was cutting videos. I was posting on a one, had to put the caption, had to cut it, had to write the title. Jamie would be like, no, the title's wrong.
It's 1 millimeter to the right.
Literally,
wrong,
Jamie, because Jamie's amazing. He's been doing this for over 10 years. Yeah. Jamie would be like, no, the title is a little bit to the left. It's with the wrong font. You've got to get the wrong font. Then the other platform doesn't have that font, so I've got to find that font. Mate, for 3 hours, I was posting, and I thought it was the worst thing ever. Because I had to do it 10 times. Yeah. I had to redo it. So
then you got Hannah to help you as well, didn't you?
I had Hannah to help me because I was over it, right? And I was like, I'm not going to be able to do this every single week. Like, this is torture, right? But this is something we had to do because at the time we didn't have an editor.
Posting and scheduling is so tedious,
Thank God we were able to, and we were blessed. And this is another godsend, man. Another godsend. We found an amazing editor.
Amazing, yeah.
Who literally is, goes beyond, above and beyond for us every week,
100%.
and has taken that duty off us.
Yeah.
And that was a big thing. So like having a good team, I think is critical.
It's almost just as important, if not more important, for growing, and scaling.
There's so much work that goes into this.
It's
that
not
you guys
just
don't
us.
See.
People think it's just you guys sitting on a couch talking, banter.
100%.
The back end will make the podcast.
100%. What about you, Bailey? What do you think was the hardest part about this whole thing?
The hardest part for me is, I would say the hardest is the preparation and just making sure that, the attention to detail and making sure that we're actually adding value. Because it's one thing to come in here and just tell stories and talk and things, but we want to be in the position where people get incremental value and actually grow in their lives from everything that we say. Like every minute that we put out, we're bringing value, whether that's through a life lesson, a story. And we're not just jumping on here and talking about our weekend and things. We actually try and build practical lessons and frameworks and structures into every episode so that people listening get clear value. They finish an episode, they go, wow, I got a bunch of takeaways from that. And that doesn't just pluck out of thin air. Like that takes a level of research, thought, in-depth planning, and structure. So for me, it's not necessarily like almost the filming and the sitting here talking is the easy part. Yeah. Like this is the fun part. It's the behind the scenes preparation so that at the end of the episode, you absolutely smashed it. And whilst we can talk off the cuff and free flow, we do notice that when there's a level of planning and structure there, it makes a massive difference. So yeah, I think that's been the hardest thing for me.
What about you, Jamie?
Yeah, I'm actually glad how we've sort of covered, the pre-production, the post, everything that goes around the filming and the actual content itself. I actually think that a big part of what I find hard still to this day and how we're all, constantly adjusting to is the actual content that we film on the day. And what I mean by that is, sometimes we have a guest, sometimes we don't. And it's always an ever-changing environment where, the patterns and whatever happens around us, we can't control.
Yeah.
So sometimes, we'll have, all our guests have been, absolutely amazing and incredible, but sometimes we'll have this, preparation plan or this framework or this structure, but then the conversation diverts into a complete different direction. And it's hard sometimes with us three having a guest as well, where we almost have to like telepathically communicate with each other.
Bro, we literally have to be
100%.
telepathic.
Because we all know what's next, but then what's next isn't coming next anymore. So it's like, I'm looking at Chris, Chris is looking at Bailey, I'm looking at Nick, and we're just like, what do we do? And then we get out the phone and we try and message each other, but Bailey's doing the conversation or we're not sort of like aware of it. So I think sometimes, in the actual episode, especially with a guest, we want to make a good impression. We want to be professional, but kind of like tying everything back to the framework, I find, challenging sometimes. And we've gone through it pretty well. I think there's just things that you have to learn over time. And what we've learned is that sort of like level of structure in the framework, but also that level of the ability to sort of go off if we need, and then always bring it back. So for example, if we're supposed to be talking about someone's business success, then you start talking about his family, then we're like, okay, cool. So on the notes, we remember that family was still a topic, but once he's done, or once we're done talking about family, let's go back to what was after the business.
So would you say that you would, for the viewers at home, would you be asking more targeted questions? Would you be kind of like guiding or walking them towards what we want them to talk about? Is that something you kind of think about?
I think so. I think, because I've been a guest on many podcasts myself, and I know that when I get asked a question, I kind of just go on a tangent because, the episode is, I guess, about the guest. So I think what the viewers out there should do if they've got guests on is kind of like give them a level of freedom where they can say whatever they want. Obviously probe the right questions, but if they start getting on a tangent, run with it. And you can always bring it back to the actual script and the framework later.
Bro, asking the right questions is literally an art. This is what I've figured out.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like the difference between the questions that you ask, whether good or bad, is honestly the difference between a good and a bad episode in the podcast.
I agree.
And that's something that we've been really trying to like focus on because like you can literally guide the conversation, framing the guest, the listeners, you guys listening at home, framing the lens that you're looking at the guest through and the episode through is purely based on the questions we ask. And we're trying to ask the questions that you guys want to know as well as us.
Yeah.
And with three of us, sometimes three of us want to take the conversation in three different directions. So yeah, I think that like really perfecting the art of like digging deeper and finding out what people want to know has been another lesson for me. That's like, yeah, I would literally call it an art.
And on that point, I think it's important to say like, be genuine with your questions. So many times I've just asked what I actually want to know. Like if you've got someone who's an expert of business or a celebrity or a sportsman, you're going to personally, like, don't think about like what's going to sound good on camera necessarily only. Like, what do you actually want to know?
Yeah.
Like, think about you. Like, it's a person. It's a personal conversation with someone. What do you want to know about this person?
Yeah.
So many times I've genuinely asked the question that I personally want to know. And I've seen comments, people were like,
Yeah.
we wanted to know that too. Or even the guest, all three of us had times where the guest has said, wow, great question.
Yeah.
Like for a guest to say who's been on countless podcasts and to say, wow, that's a great question. Oh, I've never been asked that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Because I think it takes time to actually care about what you're asking, actually care about the conversation.
100%.
Not just for the sake of conversation.
Yeah.
Actually care about what you're asking.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very important thing.
For sure, man. For sure, yeah. And I think, so we've sort of spoken a little bit about, the pre-production, obviously the posting, scheduling, the content and all these other things. But what do you guys think about, more sort of like tangible things that people need, like equipment or locations or timing and how to schedule things? Like how would you guys suggest the viewers out there did that?
I think make sure you get good equipment.
Get a Jamie Zoo on your podcast.
Honestly, yeah. We've been blessed, by you having the experience of being on podcasts, being in this industry.
I wasn't fishing, by
Me
the
and
way.
Bayley.
I wasn't fishing
No,
with that
no,
question.
you weren't. But that's my
Me and Bailey had no idea.
Nah.
We did not know how to start a podcast.
We would have
studio.
taken a lot more learning curves if it wasn't for like Jamie's experience.
Like even knowing, how to what mics to get.
Yeah.
What soundboard to get, what cameras we need. We had no idea.
No idea.
Wide lens.
Yeah.
Personal lens. Like we didn't know any of this
No
stuff.
idea.
So
Lighting, mics.
all this stuff. Yeah. Lighting.
So
makes
the lesson
a
on
big
that,
difference.
tying it back, if you guys actually do want to start a podcast, I would say find a mentor or someone who's done it, and we can be that person for you. If you guys are like really want to start a podcast and you want our opinion on things, we'll be happy to like.
And do your research.
Jamie will be happy to tell you how we do it.
Do your research.
Yeah, there's internet. The internet.
Do your
There's
research.
information everywhere.
It takes a little bit
you
of
can Google
time.
anything.
But yeah, I think definitely like you can have the best content ever, and if your equipment is not good, it's not going to relay. People aren't going to resonate. People aren't going to see. It's going to be blurry. It's not going to be good. Your sound quality might be not good. Like all these 1% make a big difference.
Yeah.
And in saying that, like I still don't know a lot. Like Jamie's more of the expert out of the three of us. Is there anything you think, like from your experience, that you could give advice to the people at home?
Yeah, I think, starting a podcast, it's not going to be cheap, that's for sure. It's an investment that you have to make that's going to be a long-term, journey where you might not see results for a long time, but when you do see them, they'll pay off massively. So fortunately, I'm blessed to already have cameras, but if you guys out there were just starting, you know what, Nick? I'm going to get Nick up here real quick because Nick's my full-time videographer and editor. So Nick can run you guys through exactly what you need to start. If you're literally getting started right now.
All right, guys, I'm going to give you guys an exact shopping list on what to get when starting your podcast. So first, we'll start off with the cameras. Depending on how many people are in the podcast, you want an individual camera for each person. And you would want a fourth camera just for a white, so you can get like everyone in at once. You know, show your background, show your surroundings.
So you can get the harbour in, eh?
get the harbor like.
Oi.
Like
yeah,
the
because we
boys-
get that in.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then you want your mics. I would say get Rode mics, but any podcast mics will work. You know, they're made for podcasts, so they're fine. But Rode mics, support the Aussies. You know, so get Rodes.
Have to support the Aussies, bro.
And then lights. I would say get 2 lights at least. Have them on a stand, and just play around with it. Have fun. Just it's however it looks on camera is how it's going to turn out. So if it looks good on camera, it's going to look good on post. Don't have too many shadows. Make sure the people on the podcast are well lit, and yeah, just keep it simple. And also, what we use is a Rodecaster. So that's what you plug in your mics into, and the camera operator can control the volume from each guest. If you have a guest has like a low volume, you can turn them up. If they're too loud, like Chris, you can turn it down.
All the way down.
Yeah, Chris's is pretty much almost off.
Yeah. I'm
But yeah,
whispering.
but that's it. Just when you start your podcast, have fun. It's always a learning experience, especially with podcasts. There's so much stuff that can go wrong, but it's all a learning curve.
Bro, easy as that.
Amazing.
And
Thank
get-
you, Nick.
Get yourself a Nick.
Get yourself
If you're
a
going to do a
Nick.
podcast, and it'll make your life 1,000 times easier. Wait, honestly, without Nick,
Yeah, done.
this would have flopped.
And I think, guys, one misconception about starting a podcast is that you're supposed to make money quick. That is
Yes.
absolutely not the case. Guys, we've been doing this for 6 months, 6 to 8 months now. And although, we all have our social medias and everything, which we do sort of monetize, this particular podcast does not make us 1 cent a month. It makes us no money.
And we're still so hungry and we still enjoy every episode.
Exactly.
So far.
Every month we're investing again and again, but we love it.
Exactly. So I think, if we were to, touch on the topic of money, what do you guys think is the best mindset to have about money and what do you guys think is the best mindset to have about monetizing a podcast? Maybe the viewers out there are like, you know what, I want to do a podcast, but all the equipment costs, all the production costs, like it's going to be a negative ROI to start with. Like what mindset should they go in with and how can they actually monetize?
This is a great question.
Be patient. I think an important thing is be patient. If you're getting in it to just make money, I think you're in it for the wrong reason.
Yeah.
You can make money. There's a lot of successful podcasts that make a lot of money, which is a great bonus.
Yeah.
But as Jamie said, it's going to take a while.
Yeah.
You have to be patient.
Yeah.
Happy
Happy birthday to you.
Wow.
Happy birthday to you,
69?
birthday to
Chris.
Thank you.
Happy birthday to you. Hip hip.
Wow.
Hip hip.
Hooray!
Hip hip.
Hooray!
Woo.
I did not see that coming. How did that even happen?
So you're
When you went to
I
get
thought you were
snacks?
30, but you're 69 apparently.
Is that when you went to get snacks?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Bro, make a wish.
Make a wish out loud.
Cristiano Ronaldo walked in.
Hey!
Yo.
Thank you so much. We'll cut that after.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, we won't have it now. Even the podcast was even more special now. Thank
That's
you.
the one. That's the one. All right, back on the topic of money.
I want to jump in on this just because my sort of lens is a bit different. Just from I've worked on so many different businesses and monetizing them, but one thing with the podcast is I genuinely believe that if you want to make a lot of money, then the podcast is not necessarily the vehicle for the cash. The podcast is the vehicle for the attention and the personal brand, which creates the cash. Just to make this a bit more practical, I would tie it to the Eiffel Tower analogy.
What? The Eiffel Tower analogy.
What are you trying to say,
think about
brother?
it like this. Think about monetizing a podcast as you as the host are the Eiffel Tower. In Paris, the Eiffel Tower is not the thing that makes the money. It's the cafes, restaurants, people selling the trinkets and everything around it that make all the money. The Eiffel Tower is the attraction that gets the eyes and the people in that vicinity. But the Eiffel Tower itself doesn't actually make that much money.
I think they charge you to go up though.
Yeah, but that doesn't make much money. It's all the cafes and restaurants that are making all the cash.
Wow.
So
He used to work there in a past life.
So my lesson here is this: the podcast is your vehicle to get eyes and attention on you as a personal brand, to build up your credibility, networking, and business opportunities. But you should have vessels around you, monetization structures, and other businesses that when the attention flows to you through the podcast, people find you and
Nice.
want to monetize your businesses, lessons, or other businesses. That, I think, is the best lens you should be looking at a podcast in terms of monetizing it, because unless you're the top of the game, which takes a very long time, you're like a Impulsive or a George Janko, you're not going to be making millions.
Yeah.
So that would be my best practical advice for like the lens to look at monetizing a podcast through.
So stay tuned for our side projects coming out.
100%. We will be doing that stuff.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
But yeah, it all starts with adding value first. You can't ask people for money until you've added value.
Yep.
So we're stacking up we're building up pent up demand of value. And then when you capitalize, you've added so much value to people's lives that they're willing to give you money because you've earned it and you actually genuinely help them. If you're jumping into the podcast to suck dollars out of people because you want to sell them products, it's not authentic and it's not going to work.
Genuine, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
And this is a perfect opportunity to address the elephant in the room. Guys, look at this place. How amazing is the place that we are in right now? We are
100%.
blessed to be here.
Without this studio, honestly, I don't think the podcast would have worked.
This isn't like a brand promo either, guys. It's just the fact that, like, of course, you guys have seen Getaways being, mentioned in every single episode of ours, but we're genuinely like telling you guys from experience how a studio does make all the difference. It's like you can do a podcast in your attic, in your house, or in your basement, but it's not going to have the same vibe if the lighting is not right, if the view isn't right, if the setting isn't good, and even from the decor standpoint, like everything has to look and feel a certain way that you want your brand to look and feel.
Bro,
So
every guest that has come into one of our studios has been like, wow. Like it's 1,000 times even cooler than on camera.
And people always remember not what you say to them, but the way that you made them feel. So if they can go into an environment and be like, wow, like that already just propels you to another level. So
more comfortable on the podcast, they feel the vibes, they're more open, and we can get a really good story out of them. So.
yeah, so studio's a massive one.
So another thing I really want to touch on, which will help you guys a lot, is reverse engineering your content strategy.
Oh, I love this part.
So
Yes.
one of the most critical elements of having a successful podcast is having viral clips. Genuinely, whilst there's the YouTube strategy, having viral clips is what's going to make the podcast not only like credible and validate it socially, but also attract a lot of new viewers. And we've had a bit of success recently with some of our clips. As we said before, one of our clips is on like 10 mil. We've got a few others with multiple hundred thousands.
Who was on that clip? Like, who was the main guy on that?
Yeah, who was the main guy?
We were all featured, I'm pretty sure. But
Nah, let's be honest.
Let's be honest.
It was the beautiful Bayley.
The beautiful Bayley.
Beautiful Bayley looking all scucks.
Looking all scucks.
His hair was on fleek that day.
anyway.
He licked his lips about 3 times.
Yeah.
That was actually what it was.
I reckon that was what it was.
No, but take us through. Break it down.
Yeah, so I genuinely have to give credit to Jamie because he's spent so many years perfecting short form content, virality hooks. His expertise and lens on our clips has genuinely been the difference between getting a few thousand views, jumping up to hitting consistently 20K, to getting multiple millions of views.
Agreed.
So you need a few things in each clip that we've found works really well for going viral. The first thing is think about it from a lens of shareability. That's one thing that I really focus on with clips, is thinking about what's going to intrigue people that they have never heard before that gives them social status by sharing to someone else. One thing you'll learn about psychology is people love to share things that give them social status, because when someone has a positive emotion from watching that video, they almost feel like they get that kudos or that credibility by sharing it. That's why things go viral, is because if I see a video where I learned something really cool, I want to share it to you and because if you watch it and learn something, I get the credit for it.
I taught you that.
Yeah,
So
that's right, that's right.
if you look through that lens of what are people going to share because it gives them status and something they never heard of. So we'll always try and analyze, psychological, facts, or, even that things in the Bible that people haven't heard about. Those go absolutely viral because people have never heard it. A lot of people jump into content and they go, what's worked for other people, or, what's going viral right now. And whilst that can definitely work and it's 100% something you should use, you should also be trying to find things that isn't viral that people don't know about, because the chances are if a video has 10 million views or so, chances are a lot of people have seen it, so it's not that new anymore. I guarantee if someone tried to replicate the video that we had that got 10 million views, it wouldn't go viral because people are like, oh, I've heard that. So that would be my biggest takeaway. The second one would be a hook in general. I think, if we all kind of know this, and Jamie banged this in our heads from the get-go. He's honestly the one who told us to focus on the hook, is if you get the hook wrong or it's not intriguing, doesn't matter how good the video is, people aren't watching. And the third point I would have is Actually, you know what, Jamie, why don't you jump in? Because I think you have a lot more expertise and knowledge on this topic that would be very beneficial for people.
Sure. So we've done the hook and we've done the shareability, right?
Yep.
Okay. So we're missing the middle section, which is the storytelling. So,
Bro, you're a genius at this storytelling stuff.
I'm all right. I've had to learn.
you're the man.
I've had to learn over
What a
10
humble
years.
guy.
I've had to learn.
He's actually the GOAT, yeah.
Okay, so what you want to do is, as Bailey said, the hook is the most important thing. Attract the viewer in with something emotional so they feel something when they see the hook. Once you've done that, you have permission now to storytell it and get the result that they're after, essentially. So after the hook, you want to storytell it. And through the storytelling, you want to have certain things that guides the hook to the end, right? So in the middle, basically, you want to have things called retention points. So say, for example, we did a video, we can even talk about our own one, which is this hidden message in the Bible is, something that no one's ever seen before. That's the hook, right? So people are like, oh, what's that? And so after they get intrigued, you want to guide the story. So you want to give detail. You want to give context. You want to give the little gems that guides the story to the result. So as you're telling the story about the Bible, they're there for the end, right? They're there to learn something, which is at the very end, most likely. So in that period, you want to just guide it forward. You want to have bits where they're going to still keep re-engaged throughout the story. And then finally, which is what you said, Bailey, the promise, which adds to the shareability of it. And guys, let me tell you, these aren't just theories. This particular exact theory has actually gotten us from, 1,000 followers on Instagram to 25,000 on Instagram from one video.
Is that at 25,000?
25,000 from one video. And then on TikTok, we went from 2,000 to about 15,000 from one video. So that's 40,000 followers of growth from one video.
That's the power of getting this right. What you were
Exactly.
talking about.
So yeah, it's no word of a lie. We have lived and breathed this. And if you guys want to know more, then yeah, definitely, I don't know, hit us up.
100%. I think another practical element that I really want to touch on is the psychology behind podcasts and the psychology of having your content and message land harder with listeners.
That's so important.
Bailey loves this stuff.
He loves it.
I just know that we're all wired in a certain way, and when you're able to hack people's attention and hack people's ability to pay attention to what you say, it makes a massive difference on whether people stay and listen and the authority that you're able to walk with your words, right?
Yep.
So there's this hypnosis technique called opinion linking.
Hypnosis.
Have you heard of it?
No.
It is attaching a statement of opinion to a statement of fact, which allows your opinion to land with a lot more authority. And there's actually a framework you can replicate.
Okay.
So it is fact, opinion, fact, and then claim.
Oh, wow.
So what you're doing is you're padding your opinion with 4 facts either side, which make your opinion sound a lot more credible. And you can use this when podcasting, creating reels, public speaking, even in a boardroom, in a business meeting, because this allows your opinion to land with so much credibility and authority that people don't second guess what you're saying.
Wow, it makes sense.
And a lot of famous celebrities and a lot of really famous speakers and business people use this technique to carry so much more authority with the things that they're saying.
Bro, that's so powerful, bro.
Wow.
If you thought that was cool, there's another psychological theory called open looping. And it's a way to make people pay attention, because when you create an open loop, our brains are wired to find the closed loop. And the only way we can get the closed loop is by watching the rest of the video. So a lot of people do that with shorts and things, and that was work with our viral content. If you can create open loops or intrigue
Very important.
with a hook, and the only way through closing it is by the end of the video, your watch rate will go through the roof, and that'll boost you in the algorithm. It's like those videos we were watching this morning of the Reddit clips, and people reading out those
they're
scenarios.
Let us know if we should do a video like that,
You hear
by the
those
way.
crazy stories, and you just have to watch the end, because
Yeah.
the hook was like, you'll never guess what happened when this person died, and
Yeah,
you know what
some
I mean?
of them are like 5 minutes, but I will actually
watch
watch
the whole thing.
Yeah, me
because I need to know.
Yeah.
It's open the loop,
Yeah.
as you said. So that's
and you
powerful.
have to watch the video to close it. So that's
Yeah.
another theory you guys can apply when you're coming up with viral clips that we use.
I guess a good way to kind of come to the end of the podcast today is showing you guys and telling you guys the core of what our podcast is about. And what that is faith. And we've touched on this throughout this episode, how faith has played an instrumental role in why we're here and why we're still here. We throughout this podcast, there's been so many times, even when we were doing our first faith episode, bro, I know we all sat here, we were so nervous, more nervous than ever.
So nervous.
We were like, how are people going to receive this?
I've never been so scared in my life.
Me too.
Bro,
Me too.
we were like, are people going to think we're just, crazy Christian nut jobs? Are people even going to like this? Are they going to, are people going to unsubscribe? But the amazing thing was, and the thing that actually grew our podcast was our faith episode.
100%.
I think a reason is because, and we're kind of speaking to you guys out there as well. It's that the reason we do this for us inherently as, the locker room is to showcase a good message upon life, really influence and inspire people out there to, emulate the ways that we've changed our lives for the better, but also ultimately is to bring people to God. And that can be in many ways by just being a reflection of what God's done in our lives. We're not trying to persuade anyone, but we're just trying to showcase that element where our faith is at the root of what we're doing. Our faith is at the foundation of us doing this podcast. And as you guys said before, the reason we're doing this is so much more than just ourselves. We're serving God. We're not serving ourselves, So it's for a much deeper reason.
And there's a unique lesson in that. And that was our sort of like unique thing that made us stand out in the podcast game, because it was raw and authentic to us. And there's no one else doing that. Where do you find 3 young guys actually talking open about their faith? So that was our element that makes us stand out in the market. So if you guys are trying to start a podcast and things, find out your not a unique selling point. I don't want to make it businessy, but find out what makes you stand out. Because the reality is there's thousands of podcasts. We don't need another generic business podcast. We don't need another generic 3 guys talking about how many chicks they want to pull and what they're doing partying on the weekends. They don't need more people talking about their experience on Love Island.
Yeah.
We need niche elements that connect to an audience on a much deeper level. So I would encourage people to look deeper into like what you can provide to the market that people can't find somewhere else. Because the lesson that I've found as well with that is the reality is you might think your ideas are cool, but you are competing with Mr. Beast to get watch time on YouTube. Yeah. You're competing with Logan Paul. Yeah. Someone to watch your podcast or listen to your podcast, they have to not listen to Gary Vee. They have to
100%.
not listen to Logan Paul. They have to not watch Nelk. And that's a pretty big competition bar. So you have to think, what am I going to provide to people that they can't get anywhere else?
But it has to be genuine. We didn't just get together and say, oh, let's talk about God.
Nah.
We're going to go viral because of this. We wanted to talk about God.
Yeah.
And because of that, and we had a bigger purpose, we actually found some success.
100%. Because that's what people gravitated to us
100%.
for, because it was different.
Yeah, viewers are very savvy in 2024. They can see if something's authentic or not. And I think the more you try and fabricate and fake, your messaging and the reason you're doing something, the more they're going to see through that, and the more they're going to, switch off and watch other people that actually are doing it for the right reason. So you guys have to have a very distinct reason as to what you're actually doing and how it's actually going to help people out there, because we all know a life of self-serving and a life of, self-glorifying essentially is a very unfulfilled life.
And let me tell you, the satisfaction you'll get when you get the messages coming in, people coming up to you on the street. We've had this so many times now, pretty much since the faith episode, of people saying, I cannot tell you guys how much you've helped me, break off from anxiety, get back into faith, change my life. Like, not saying that to toot our horn. I'm saying that to explain to you the feeling when you go super authentic to who you are and you're providing something to people that is raw and authentic and they can connect with. That's ultimately the most fulfilling thing. It's not going viral. It's not getting the clips or getting the views. It's actually when someone says, man, you guys actually changed my perspective on a certain topic and actually really helped me get through a tough time. That's all we're here for.
That's amazing.
We're not here for the millions of views. That is the most raw, authentic thing. We've had so many messages since our faith podcast, people coming up to me and Jamie at different churches we go to, people coming up to us in the street. We've had so many inbounds, even personally, of people saying, you guys are doing something amazing, like keep going. It's helping so many people. And that ultimately is what drives us.
I think a good way to end this podcast is we can all give, one piece of advice to the viewers. What have we, in our experience, doing this podcast, what have we learned? What's one thing that, there's so many things we can touch on, but if there's just one thing each, what would we say? Jamie, what would you give to the viewers in your experience that they can use today?
Just start. I don't think you're going to get anywhere by holding off for too long. I think a lot of people try and start too perfectly. You might not have the best cameras. You might not have the best studio, lighting, all these things. But the fact that you're starting and you're actually moving the needle instead of just working on it, but you're being proactive and practical about it, is the first key. I didn't start making my own videos in a perfect setting. I had to really build up to it. And yes, there's a lot of competition around it. And yes, there's a lot of people that others could watch. But at the same time, your message is unique. And whatever you have to say is going to be different from the rest because it's coming from you. No one can replicate your story. No one can have the same life experience as you. So just start and know that your story is powerful enough, if it's from a genuine place, to actually, resonate with people.
Love it, bro.
Bailey?
Yeah, my words of motivation would have to be, you're one big moment away from changing the trajectory of your life. You're one viral video away. You're one podcast away. You're one connection, one episode, one moment, one call, one meeting. And that for me is like one of the most exciting things, because you can literally go from, as we saw, you can go from like being a local, 1,000 follower podcast, not much happening, to almost overnight or within a week being, thousands of followers, millions of views, and literally changing the trajectory of your life. So if you jump into it with that mindset, because the start's going to be tough. You might go a month, few months, multiple months when not much happens. But one moment, one video, and 100%. You're all of a sudden just put on a whole new caliber. And all of a sudden people are like, oh, overnight they go from, oh, it's another podcast, to, man, you guys are doing something really cool. Literally overnight. So I think that's so empowering. Just keep going. And as soon as that one moment clicks, everything changes. What about you, bro?
For myself, I've got two. I know I said one, but two. First one is, obviously, as we've said, be genuine, and don't be afraid to be vulnerable. I think a lot of people are afraid of what other people are going to think about them, and they don't necessarily, be themselves. They don't convey the message that they're actually trying to say because they're worried people are going to judge them. They're going to get hate online. But I think one thing we've all learned is just be vulnerable. Be yourself. Let people see the actual true you, who you are. And the people that are going to resonate are the people that are going to be your audience. You are going to find a group of people that really love who you are and your message. And my last thing is accountability. We're very fortunate that we've got the three of us. I think keeping yourself accountable is a pivotal step in having a successful podcast. Successful anything, but we're talking about a podcast. We are so fortunate that we've got three of us who keep each other accountable.
Yeah, that's so
I think it's so important. So that's why coming back to the point about having someone else with you is very important. When you don't want to come in to do the podcast, when you're being lazy, when you're not doing the work, you have your brother or your friend or whoever it is telling you, no, you need to do this. We need to have this at this time. I think that is a key. I think that's a key step into making sure that you be successful.
Love it, bro. And I think to wrap it all up, we'd love to sort of talk about where we see this going, sort of cast a vision for where we want to go, because obviously it's been, early days. We're obviously still warming up. We have so much to learn. We're learning along the way, but it'd be cool to break down or hear from you guys. What's your vision with Locker Room? Why should people become part of this community? Where are we going? Why should people ride along with on this journey with us? Like, where do you see this going? Let's start with you, Chris.
I want this to be a movement. I want to have I think it would be amazing to have hundreds of young men, going to camps together, like getting together, brainstorming, whether it's go to church, whether it's go for a weekend away and just talk about business, success, motivation. I feel like it's a place that people can just feel a part of something on a larger scale, doing events, meeting fans, meeting people in the locker room. I think that's an amazing thing we can do later on in our journey, just bringing a lot of people together, in person.
Yeah, love it.
What about you guys?
I think our ultimate inherent message of this podcast is to essentially put men back on the right path. I think there's so much social conditioning that we've been a part of for so long, and you can see the way society is crumbling and being destructed and all these things. And we want to really be that beacon of light to sort of show men that, we've all come from our own certain past. We've all had dark things happen to us. We've all, done things that we're not so proud of, but now we're on the right path we believe in. And we want to showcase to you guys how much has actually helped our lives and how much, following God and actually being disciplined and not taking it personally in terms of, oh, there are all these rules now, I can't do this and that, but actually showcasing to you guys that, no, this is actually a really good way to live. And you're going to be fulfilled. You're going to be successful. You're going to be, productive, and you're going to ultimately create a bigger purpose than yourself. So that's what I see the locker room as being. I agree with you, Chris. I want it to be a movement and a culture where we can, get a whole army of people together where we can move forward and really just be positive influences in their lives. So that's kind of where I see it going.
Love it, bro. To finish off, I guess my angle is more so from, well, we're sort of make a promise to you guys that we're going to do everything that we can to bring on the best guests, provide you the best content, and actually genuinely give you life advice that's going to help you. This is a locker room for the game of life, and I genuinely believe that we want to pass the keys of knowledge from those who have it to those who need it, and that's including us. So the guests we're going to get on, we're talking to some pretty big international guests who are very big names at the moment, trying to pull some big deals and get people on. So that's what we're providing for you guys. We really want to use our connections to make sure that you guys can learn from people who've gone before you, and we're going to do everything we can to get that for you. And the last thing I just want to say is, we're genuinely so grateful for everyone who's watching and everyone who's been a part of it so far, everyone who's subscribed, liked a video, commented, shared with anyone, because genuinely you guys are the only reason this grows, and you guys are the reason that we keep going. So I just want to say a genuine thank you for everyone who's been a part of this. We're just warming up. We've barely even scratched the surface of what we want to do, and we're so excited for the future. So yeah, we'd just love to say thank you. And to support us, all we ask for is that, you share this with someone, or, give it a like, give it a subscribe. That's all we ask for. And in return, we're going to promise to give you the best content, or work towards giving you the best content and podcast you've ever seen.
Amazing. And you guys know where to find us: Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, TikTok and Instagram, which we've just told you guys has really blown up recently, and Facebook, all the platforms out there. And thank you guys for watching.
Wrap it up.
Appreciate it. And we'll see you
on the
guys
next one.
next time.
Peace.
See ya.